I am a law enforcement officer of 6 years. I just wanted to let you guys know that anything I say is my opinion and mine only. It does not reflect my current department's opinion or law enforcement as a whole. Thank you. All right, everyone, welcome back to our podcast, Secret Society of Man. I am Ryan. I have my co-host Zach across the table. How are we doing this week, my friend?
Pretty good, man.
Good. So we'll get right to it. Today we wanted to talk about a news story that we stumbled upon, basically about incompetent sex between a husband and a wife. It sounds like they're in Taiwan, I believe. Taiwan or Thailand,
I think this
right?
is the second story we've had. Maybe it is Thailand, but second story we've had from the Asian countries in the last couple of weeks.
Yes. Very interesting. I don't know what the culture's like over there or really what entails with, wife and husband role. I'm sure it's a lot different than what it is here. But it sounds like the wife wants a divorce from
the
him,
husband
correct?
wants a divorce. So the issue here is that they've been going through their marriage after they have had children.
Correct.
But the wife
That's
has decided that she has had enough of this guy's incompetent sex game, and she started to implement new rules and boundaries in the relationship. Yes. So she started to charge a fee for various services. One of those services is sex. So she said that you are so bad at sex and you are so fat that I can't stand to do it anymore. You need to pay me money every time that you want to be intimate. In addition to that, she also was charging for having conversations, for taking her out to dinner. So any time that he wanted to interact with her in any romantic way as a married couple, she would charge him money. And so the guy got fed up with it, and he petitioned for divorce, which he was granted because the judge said that it was just a cold and unfixable relationship.
I'm curious because I didn't see how long he put up with that. It didn't. Yeah, because it was like once a month. Like she was gonna have sex with him, right? Like it was like she was really super limited on it. Very just. Like he's better off just like buying a prostitute every time.
I think it was a number of years. I mean, I wouldn't even be able to put up with that type of cold shoulder for more than 1 month, personally. Yeah,
so I don't know. I have no idea really what led up to that. Like you said, I don't know if clearly there's bad. Well, I mean, there could be something wrong with her. Like, what type of mental health issues do you have to be like, you know what, dude, your sex game's so bad, I'm making you pay. Like, as a wife. You know what I mean? Like, come on. Like,
well, there's a few ways to sort of look at it. And the way it handled probably wasn't the best. But, I mean, at the very least, the guy got hit with a bait and switch because even if she was lying the whole time, he thought things were okay. But then all of a sudden, he now needs to pay for it because he's so bad. I've read a lot of stories on Reddit, like these different relationship like subreddits, and there's a lot of cases where this type of thing will happen. And I've seen it from both perspectives. But they will get married, they'll have a happy relationship, but then the wife will decide that she's asexual, which just means that she literally has no interest in sex or any like intimate physical touch whatsoever. And in some cases, they say, I don't want to have sex anymore because I put up with it for long enough. In some cases, they tell the guy, like, just so you know, I'm asexual. I'll still do it as a form of maintenance on whatever set schedule they agree upon.
Holding up the relationship, Like,
that's essentially what it is. And then as a guy, I mean, if your wife tells you that after however long, you're in a marriage with them, but then they say, yeah, we'll still have sex, but I'm totally not into it, and it's just like a biological function to me just to make you happy. Like, that's not steamy.
No.
What are you supposed to do there?
Yeah, I have no idea. That's a great way to put it, because I don't know what, like you said. I mean, there's plenty of ways to look at it. I can't imagine how that went down in court. Like, that's got to be embarrassing, right? Like, how do you go tell the judge, like, yeah, my wife wants me to pay for sex to her, and I've had enough of it. Like, people always say like judges hear it all, whatever, but that's got to be a first for the judge. And again, I don't know. Sex could be looked at completely different in that type of culture. I don't know. I don't know if that's more of like a normal thing. I have no idea. That's not a thing in America.
I'm sure that's not normal.
But yeah, I mean, and like you said,
it wouldn't be in the news if that was an everyday
the asexual thing throws me off though, because that's it is part of your innate human, like, to want to have sex. Like, that is part of your brain function is to populate the earth.
Yeah.
So when people are like, yeah, I'm asexual, I have zero, I'm like, what? Not even like there's nothing there, like even like a Hollywood actor that you lust after or something,
right.
Like that's strange to me. That's concerning. I don't know.
I've heard guys that describe themselves as asexual, again, online. I've never met someone like this in person, but they say that they do jack off still. I mean, there's some sort of desire there, but I guess they just don't feel any sort of connection with people.
Okay.
But then on some level, though, so I've heard like a lot of women aren't interested in sex. And I mean, how many times have you heard in your life that once you get married, sex stops?
Just drops.
It just like it's over because they got what they want or whatever the spin is on it.
Right.
I've heard that so many times, and I know guys like that they joke around about how they only get to have sex every other Wednesday or something like that. And while it is a joke and it is a cliche thing, that wouldn't be said by anybody that isn't in a situation like that. He might be hyperbolic about it. Maybe it's not as bad as he jokes around, but there's some tension there. He's not getting it as much as he wants.
Right.
And so then you got to look at it like, well, whose fault is that really? And how many guys are so bad in bed that women literally aren't even interested in it?
Like, what does that mean? Like, is she just laying down like a starfish and just 40 seconds later, however long it takes him, it's over?
I think it comes down to how much does the guy focus on just himself versus like her. Like some guys don't care at all if like the girl enjoys it.
Right.
And they think that just by thrusting that it's like that's going to be the best thing in the world. And they just don't even think about how it can be better. And a lot of women probably are stuck in relationships like that because they probably don't choose their relationships based on that. Like a lot of men would place more weight on that. I think women are more likely to overlook not being satisfied there if they're into the person. But she probably put up with it for a while in this story. But she also mentioned that an equal issue is that he's fat as well.
Correct.
And
the
so
overweight part. Yep.
Not only is he bad and she, she just like isn't impressed with his performance, she's also not attracted to him, and their I guess lust for each other is probably faded. So all these things have come together to she just got fed up with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And some of it too could be like you said, maybe not in this case for these people, but possible, like, I've heard porn addictions doing this to people.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it desensitizes your brain so much that you can't get excited at the normal being with your partner. Like, that's not a thing anymore,
The visuals,
So,
because, you can go down a rabbit hole with that, right? And some people, they just chase, like, a higher and higher, like, I guess, like high off of the porn. There's also something called the death grip effect, where they just hold it so tight that nothing can compare to it. So a lot of women, like, their guy would literally not be satisfied, and then they have to end up, like, giving the dude, like, a hand job or something. Or, like, I've read a story where a guy has to have porn going on, like,
in the background.
Like, will hold his phone over her head as they do it, so that way he can actually find something stimulating. How humiliating.
Yeah, as the chick, dude, like, that's got to be the most humiliating and self-worthless, like, that you would ever feel. Like, am I not enough type of thing? You know what I mean? Like, that's interesting, man.
And women will put up with that for a long time until they just, like,
until they're done with
snap. But people will just not communicate their issues with their partner. They're more likely to go online and post on Reddit, what should I do in this situation? My husband doesn't do anything that I like in bed.
Right.
But it's like, well, tell him that. Like, what do you want done? He's not going to read your mind. If it doesn't come naturally to him, like, you do have to bring it up. And that can be something that a lot of people want to avoid. It's like a taboo subject and it's awkward to bring up. But it's like, if you ever want the problem to be solved, you got to tell him. And then if then things don't improve, well, maybe that's on him if he just doesn't care about your satisfaction. And the gender doesn't really matter. It could equally happen with a girl too. But like, you got to communicate. Otherwise, you can't really blame the person for not knowing what to do.
Yeah, the communication thing is a huge issue. They talk about that like in some college classes that I took. There was like interpersonal communication that I took, and that topic came up. And I don't know, I didn't go down the road of demons my professor had, because she was very much against men, it appeared. Like, she would rip on men, like, all the time in class. So she's teaching an interpersonal communication class, but she hates men, it seems like. So it doesn't really seem like, what happened in your relationship? Shouldn't you be the expert in, like, this communication stuff? But, so she had brought that up, though. She brought up the whole kind of talks behind closed doors with your partner and trying to figure out, not only with sex, but like with anything, with money, like, hey, that $300 you're spending a day on Amazon, we need to have a conversation about that because a roof needs to be over our head type of thing, Yeah. So that's not personal experience. I'm just saying from other things, but
well, this is why it's so important to like make sure you're compatible with somebody before you get together with them. There's a lot of different ways that you can find that you're incompatible with somebody after living together. You can date and like be on a honeymoon phase, but if you like wait till marriage, well, you're not going to know if the other person is just bad or they are into something that just disgusts you, or they're asexual, and they didn't even realize it because they've been saving themselves for marriage, but then when they finally do it, they realize they're just not into it at all. You're already married. Like, you're trapped in that situation. Same goes for living with somebody. Like, if you hold off on living with somebody before making that commitment, well, you can like somebody when you go on dates and things like that, but living with somebody is an entirely different thing. I mean, their cleanliness habits, just the way that they are at home in the comfort of their own home is going to be different than how they are when they're trying to put their best foot forward on a date. And then even as like a parent, like, having a baby ties you with somebody whether you like them or not, and in that way it is more significant than being married, and it's an equal or greater commitment. But if you have a baby with somebody, like, the way that they parent can be completely different. I've heard stories of like people that have completely changed after having a baby, and it ruins the relationship. Like, my buddy, he had a baby with a girl, and obviously some kind of postpartum depression that she never got over completely changed her. She just went crazy, basically, and ended up homeless. And he has full custody of the kid now. But it's like a switch completely changed in her brain. If he would have been married, it would have been a way worse situation. So you got to make sure that you're compatible on all levels and take those things seriously, too. A lot of people will say, okay, well, everything's great except for this one aspect of it, and I'm willing to overlook it because everything else is good. Compromise is good, but, if the sex is bad, are you going to be comfortable with that for the next, 50 years, 60 years?
Till you die.
Yeah, that resentment's going to build up, and that kills marriages. So you got to, seek these things out ahead of time and figure out if you can come to a solution before you get married. And if not, they might be a great person, but you just might not be compatible.
So what do you think it was about this guy that made her stay around for so long? I mean, was it money? Like, do you think, you know what I mean?
So it could be that, he's not producing money like he used to. Maybe he used to be attractive, but now he's not anymore. He let himself go. I mean, you don't want to be with somebody that you used to find really attractive and they used to take care of themselves, and now they completely have no hygiene at all. Like, dude. If your wife just stopped showering or whatever, how long could you put up with that? She was nice enough to yeah, exactly. Some people just let themselves go.
I think some of it, too, though, is on the delivery, right? Like, if you're like, hey, you reek. Like, or if you say, hey, I haven't noticed, or I noticed you haven't showered in 5 days. Like, have you thought about it? Like, I don't know, come about it a different direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, especially, you just, and, like you said, the more you date your partner, or know your partner, you'll know how to, say things or come across a little better that they would be expecting you to say instead of something that might come off offensive to them. But I'm curious. I would love to be a fly on the wall in their kitchen or whatever, in their house in general, because I can't imagine the amount of just disdain of her just staring at the ceiling the whole time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that they weren't even in a relationship by the end. I mean, they just were living together, tolerating each other.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of resentment's built up. If they would have just brought it up like you said, hey, I noticed you haven't showered, or hey, I noticed that you stopped going to the gym, or you're not taking care of yourself, 10 years ago, whenever it started, then it wouldn't have been a problem. Maybe he has some kind of depression or something like that, but to just let it build up until you snap and you can't take it anymore. I mean, there's no coming back from that. No. I mean, this relationship is over.
Yeah.
And one more thing I was thinking is like, it's obviously great that he's going to be able to get a divorce, and it's probably better for both of them. They're both going to be better off. But if you're in that situation, like, okay, great, you get a divorce, but she still gets half your money. But let's say back to the asexual situation, you get married to somebody, and 2 years later they come out and they say, well, I'm asexual, I've never really been into you, I don't like having sex. Well, you get a divorce, and she's still going to be able to take half of your money, even though it's a complete bait and switch. You didn't do anything wrong. Yep. It's just she's just not attracted to anybody. Like, there's nothing you could have done about that. And she wasn't coming forward with that at the beginning. And then now you're just screwed. Like, that's a sad situation to find yourself in.
Yeah. So do you just get a prenup then? Every time now?
Well, I mean, you probably should do that anyways. It's funny because, like, I think every guy says, yeah, like, I'm going to get a prenup. But then, when it comes down to it, like, I don't think I'm going to get a prenup, No. And it's not that I'm, like, naive, like, nothing could ever happen to our relationship and, like, oh, we would never get a divorce. Right. Like, you can't predict that. Like, shit happens. But I don't know if I want to go through that whole. I can barely make a doctor's appointment, let alone an appointment with a lawyer to hash out
and
all
how
this
much
stuff.
Is that going to cost?
Yeah, exactly. Like even if it's $1,000, like I'm just like, oh, not worth it, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'll kick myself later if I do need one.
Right.
But that's probably the best way to go about it. But I've even heard that prenups aren't 100% solid. Like if you have someone that's really malicious and maybe they have a lot of money or you have a lot of money and they hire a great lawyer, they can get around those prenups too. So sometimes it's unavoidable.
Yeah.
So the next story is a study that was done by the Cancer Association. And they found that millennials have like a significantly higher rate of 17 different types of cancer than the previous generations in the same point of life. Now, a majority of cancer is still in people 50 or older, but when analyzing people that are in their 20s and 30s compared to previous generations when they were at that same point of life, millennials have a much higher rate of obesity. I'm sorry, not obesity.
Well,
they have a much higher, they have a much higher rate of cancer. And 10 of the 17 cancers they're linking strongly to higher rates of obesity.
Yes. Which in general, right, you hear about doctors, they talk about smoking, other things like that, that would increase your chances. Obviously, obesity is one of them, diabetic, heart disease, all that other stuff that comes with it. But what's curious to me is I've also been reading a lot of articles that talk about more and more of our foods are becoming more and more processed.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it's just because we're the first generation to really start eating more of the processed foods compared to pre-90s or whatever, because millennials are what, 90 to like 94?
Yeah, I think 97, which is the year that I was born,
Sure.
is the last
The
millennial
cutoff.
year. Yeah.
So you're talking early to mid 90s. So anything in the 80s or less was probably somewhat healthier, and then that just compounds, right? So does that mean the generation after us is going to have 25 cancers that are higher? You know what I mean? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, and I mean, the processed food thing is also linked back to the obesity as a whole.
Yeah.
Because, not only fast food, which is highly processed, but also a lot of the stuff you can buy at the grocery store. Like, you can go to that freezer section and you can buy, Hot Pockets and taquitos and pizza rolls and all this different
Easy
stuff.
stuff to make,
Stuff that's designed for quick meals to microwave at the office, in addition to the food, there's also an issue of microplastics, which you hear about a lot.
I did hear that, yeah.
Which is literally in everything. I mean, like, you can't take a sip from a water bottle without ingesting microplastics.
Yes.
And so it doesn't matter if you don't smoke, if you live relatively healthy, you're going to be taking in these carcinogens, and it's almost unavoidable. Might as well smoke.
I didn't see anything about necessarily if it was linked to millennials not going to the doctors, like if they're not catching something early, or if I didn't see anything like that. Do you think that might be a possibility, as millennials are more kind of based off of WebMD and they're just leaving it at that? Or like the
well,
opposite?
actually, I read a couple more articles, and one of them contained a video where some news or talk show, and they were interviewing a doctor that was sort of explaining this, and she linked 3 different things to, or she sort of identified 3 different things to allow you to more likely avoid these cancers. So it was the eating habits, just the lifestyle habits in general. People are being more sedentary now.
Yes.
And that's also linked to cancer as well. And then the third thing was early detection. I know that one of the best things I could do, one of the best improvements that I make, I eat relatively healthy and I live a relatively active lifestyle, is to go and get screenings. But I just know I'm not going to do that. Like I said, I just told you I can't even make a doctor's appointment. Yeah. But even from like a financial standpoint, it comes down to what kind of insurance you have. Like, I have what's technically called catastrophe insurance. Yeah. Okay, like when I called the lady, she was going over their options. They had like all the different names for them. They had like the gold plan, they had silver plan. Yeah. I got the wood plan. Okay. She's like, she's like, a lot of young people, they want to choose that one, but I think you really should choose the silver. I'm like, don't even waste your breath. I'm choosing that one.
Yeah.
All right. It's the plan where I can pay, maybe $10,000 is like my out-of-pocket maximum.
Yeah.
But like nothing really is covered. So it's like if I have a terrible accident or I break my arm, then I'll go in and I'll only pay $10,000. But if I go in for checkups and stuff, it's still going to be $50 a time for a checkup, let alone a cancer screening.
Yeah, so believe it or not, that's actually how my insurance is through work. So,
really?
Yep. So for single coverage, it's let me look here. Go through. I believe it is like $5,000, $5,400 for single coverage. For family, it's just under $11,000 deductible. So when I called them, I'm like, so does this deductible, like, do you guys cover anything? Like even like 10% until I hit my deductible? And no. So basically I have to break every bone in my body and then pay for it. And then that's it. So
that sucks.
Yeah. The only reason why, right, is because if I get hurt at work, they pay for that. So
it's a trade-off, I guess?
Kind of, in a sense. Now, obviously, some places have better medical insurance than others, but I won't go down that road too much because of
at least you can strike.
Stuff, but
I can't. Oh, you can't?
Police can't strike.
Oh, okay. Well, that sucks, dude.
No.
Okay.
Please. There's 2 or 3 professions in the U.S., and police are one of them. We can't strike.
Oh, that sucks. So, I mean, I guess that's good for us,
That's why they make it that way. Yeah. So we have to go to work angry
and
just still do it and work off the old contract till new things come around.
Oh, that sucks.
Yep.
But I think a lot of people are in that position. I know multiple people that don't have any health insurance at all. And people, and especially as, people's budgets just get tighter and tighter, and they can afford less and less things. I mean, people aren't going to go and get regular checkups. The only people that I know that get regular checkups are women. I don't know any guys that are going 2-3 times a year just to get a checkup.
Right.
Like, oh, I'm here for my checkup, doc. Like, what?
Well, no. It's interesting you say that, because actually this last year, I'm 28. I made it a point that every 2 years until I'm 40, I'm going to get one physical, because of the amount of cancer in our families.
Yeah.
Skin, you name it, head to toe, we're full of cancer, right? So I've made it a point that every 2 years until I hit 40, then it'll be every year. Once I hit 40, I'm going to just go in for like a half hour, just blood tests and stuff to make sure I'm good. But I mean, it has to be done. It's not fun. I mean, I don't want another dude squeezing my balls.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if something's wrong, I would like to live past 60, right? And not to mention, I mean, you talk about cancers that grow quickly. I mean, people don't go for 3 months. You're already talking about it could be up to like a baseball-sized tumor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
And that makes perfect logical sense. And everybody should do that regardless of your family history. I mean, like we're reading here, I mean, there's so many things we're exposed to now. But it is illogical, my laziness for not scheduling these appointments. Like, I don't even go to get my tires rotated. Like, I don't do any of these maintenance on my car or my body. Making the appointment is the biggest obstacle. Yeah. Like, I just never get around to making the appointments, and and that's what stops me. What I need is like a HUD display, like they have in like Halo or something, where like it's just like I need a health bar in my vision, you know. Remember Google Glass? Like that's kind of what that was gonna be. Is like you'd have like a heads up display walking around life. Yeah. I need a health bar and I need a bank account counter, so that way I can always have an eye on both of those things.
What I find interesting as well is when I call in for a doctor appointment, I don't like calling in. They're like, "Okay, and why will you be coming in on that day or whatever?" And be like, "Oh, I have a rash." Okay, can you describe where? Why do you taking the appointment? Why do I need to tell you?
Yeah, let me tell
you know
the
what
doctor.
I mean? Yeah, like you're not a doctor. You know what I mean? So I wonder, like I feel like, and I know legally they can't do this, but I feel like after I hang up the phone, they're like, "Yo, this asshole has a rash on his penis. So when he comes in next Thursday, you know, just all stare at him." You know what I mean?
Dude, HIPAA be damned. You know they're doing that.
Absolutely, man. There's a reason why there's no cameras in the lunchroom over there. You know what I mean?
Man, every profession talks shit about the people calling into the customers, and you know they're doing that.
They're
laughing their ass off at some of this stuff.
You know it's happening. And I think as a guy, like, as much as we come off confident and tough, I think that's part of the issue too, is like sometimes there might be embarrassment about it or something, right? Or like how many times you see the fucking commercials of the bent peppers and shit, and it's like Peyronie's disease or whatever it's called.
What is that? Peyronie's.
It's like, have you seen, you haven't seen those commercials where it's like this thing pops up and the peppers are like shaped like this, and they're like, "Men, if this is you,
oh my
going
God,
to the doctors, you have Peyronie's disease or something." Apparently it like bends your penis where you can't get erect.
How many people didn't realize they had a problem until that pepper showed up on the screen, and they're like, "Oh shit."
They're like, for real, dude. Like, I mean, seriously though, like I think about that. Like, I think a lot of it is the embarrassment. Now, obviously, I think women might find that surprising, right? Because a lot of the men, they're just confident and they're like, whatever. But I think that is part of it. I mean, like I said, I've never had something where it's like, I don't know, man, I got purple shit coming out of my ass. I don't want to talk to the doctor about. I've never had a moment like that, but I can see somebody being like, "Dude, I think there's like a finger growing on my neck or some bullshit." You know, like just something weird, you know, like where they're like, "I don't know what this is and it's freaking me out." I think there's some embarrassment about that. But I'm sure doctors see it all, man. So like, I guarantee you go in there and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're like the 10th person this week that I've dealt with that has this issue or whatever," you know, and whatever. What I feel bad for is who the hell was Mr. Peroni in the first place? Like, who is that named after? You know what I mean? Like, can you imagine being the first guy going into that office and your dick is bent at a 90 degrees, dude, and they're like, "Bro, we've never seen that before, and we're going to name it after you." Like, that's a disease that we're going to name after you.
He thought he was hitting the pussy with a right hook, dude. He's like...
They're like, yeah, I mean, imagine, like, the blowjobs, dude. It's just like, my God.
Oh, my God.
So, yeah, isn't that interesting, though?
Yeah,
like,
I've never heard of that. I would not want anything to happen. STDs are so terrifying,
scary.
Dude. And they try to make it seem like some of them aren't that big of a deal. They're like, oh, like chlamydia, they'll just clean that right up. Like, I don't even know what it looks like. I do not want chlamydia, dude.
Yeah.
That syphilis sounds like it itches a lot. Like, this stuff, I would be so terrified if I found anything like that down there. And some people are so relaxed about it, bro. Like, as if it's the same as just, like, catching a cold. Oh, I've had syphilis 4 times.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think with me, it's like, obviously the big ones are scary, right? Like herpes, AIDS.
I would
HIV,
rather
whatever.
get AIDS because you can't see it. It doesn't make anything ooze.
Here's part of the problem, right? So like warts. Have you ever had warts on your hands or face or
No, not really.
you've
but
never had a wart?
No.
Okay. So like if you've ever had warts in your life, you have what's called HPV, okay? Human papillomavirus. It stays around in your body and it can be passed like through physical touch. So like that can include sexual contact, can include anything. Now, the doctors know that HPV having just warts is a very like one of the most common STDs out there, so they don't really even talk about it anymore because it's just kind of one of those things where it just cures on its own. It doesn't cause any issues, doesn't cause inflammation, whereas like herpes, you have a burning cyst oozing on your dick or something. It's like, yeah, that's a problem, dude. Like, I would not like that. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
would
that
never be with another woman again. I would never want to have
Would
the
you cut it off?
conversation. What? No, I wouldn't do that. I'd just keep it to myself. But because once that happens, you either need to knowingly pass it on and not tell anybody about it, or
Yeah.
you need to be upfront about it. I would
see
never
what
want to have that conversation. Like, hey, listen, like, I got herpes. It's not flared up right now.
Yeah.
As long as it's not a flare up, then we
Right.
can do it.
Right.
Like, no, I'm not ever going to
That's
do
not a
that.
thing.
It'd be
No.
over for me.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So that's the thing, dude. Like, that's honestly in the past, like, that honestly drives me more to the doctors is freaking out about like dumb shit.
Yeah.
Or like you go there and they're like, oh, like that's nothing. You know, that's just a cyst or whatever. Like, I've had sebaceous cysts, they call them, which is just right under your skin is the sebaceous layer.
Okay.
And it's just a fatty cyst underneath.
But if you go
But-
for essentially what amounts to be nothing, and you
Right.
still got to pay him on the way out, it's like, God
Correct.
damn, I wish
Well,
I would have
that's-
gone.
Correct, and that's the problem. Like with like your deductible and my deductible is like you literally walk in there and you're like, hey, like I don't know what this is. I'm like kind of nervous about it. Like whatever. You go in there and they literally take 3 minutes or less. And they're like, yeah, no, that's nothing. You don't need it. It'll go away on its own. Like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And
I could have just sent
paid
you a picture.
$150 for that 3-minute visit. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, dude. So, yeah, dude. I get it, man. I get it. So, to you men out there, go get some medical checkups if you can. Again, another news story that we came across was it sounded like some type of break-in or like people were coming over to her neighbor's house, or the neighbor wanted her neighbors to come over because she thought like they were pedophiles, right?
Yeah.
Or like some extreme type of predator.
Yeah,
Like
she said that she can see people's
Correct.
souls.
Yeah.
And that she wanted to collect their dark soul for her husband.
Dude, I mean, hey man, okay, let's go back to our first episode for a sec, or our first story.
Yeah.
Okay? So imagine her in bed, dude. Like for him to, I mean, he's probably off his rocker too. That's usually how it works. But for him to deal with that, dude, she's got to like take him to another universe every time they have sex.
No,
or
they were
something.
in it. They are definitely in this together. And I had a similar thought.
Yeah.
I thought that it's kind of the fact that she was willing to die in a blaze of glory with her husband, like that is the polar opposite of that first guy's relationship. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, they
Yes.
have good communication. You know, they probably had a crazy night the night before,
Yeah,
knowing this was about to go down. Christy would not die in a blaze of glory against the police.
What
for me.
state did this happen in again?
I don't remember.
Okay. So also when I read this, what it really reminded me of was, you know, when we go through trainings, you know, for example, there are certain businesses in the city that I work at that has constant business alarms, okay? Constant. Like to the point where it's like, you know, like it's just the manager, but you never know, right? So you always have to go. My point to that is after the 50th alarm at the same business, it's hard not to drop your sense of like alertness, right? Because you're like, yeah, I'm going to go talk to John and tell him, hey man, like this is the 50th time that I've talked to you. It makes me wonder, like with the cops being involved here, like they were probably just planning on just like showing up and having a conversation and leaving it at that. And next thing you know, gunfire starts going off, and it's just one of those things where not to be complacent, right? And they probably knew who this girl was. I mean, if this woman is talking about like taking people's dark souls and bringing it to her husband, I have a few in mind that I can think of where it's like, yeah, that one surprised me, like something coming out of their mouth like that, you know? So it's very interesting, and unfortunately very sad because both of them died. Correct?
Yeah, so to finish summarizing the story, so, the cops ended up going to the house, and they thought, I guess, somehow there was, like, some sort of, like, robbery going on inside or something. Like, saw someone, like, running inside. Yep. And I heard the chief kind of giving a rundown of the story briefly, at least the start of it. And one police officer goes inside, and she's just acting strange. Like, she starts calling out to St. Anthony and St. Joseph, and
that's a
just
red
start,
flag. Okay, like,
So that happens. So then he gets a taser out, and the taser has a light on it, and she says that's God's light.
Dude, that's a bad day, dude. That's
Ultimately, that police officer ended up getting shot by the husband. They had 20 guns inside the house. Yep. Like, ready to go. And so that police officer gets shot.
Yep.
He was wounded and then inside the house now. And then backup came, 2 other officers. There was a shootout. They were trying to retrieve their fallen officer's body. The officer that got shot was helicoptered to a hospital, and he was pronounced dead. So an officer did die. Another one got wounded. And then both of the people that lived in the house committed suicide. And I also saw that their daughters also were dead in the house. And they kind of breezed past that in the articles.
Yeah. It's like, what does that mean? Were they already dead prior? Or
I don't know if they were part of the suicide. Right, I don't know if they were also in on the plan or what.
Shot by police? Like, we don't know.
Exactly. So I'm not sure what happened there, but crazy ass story, dude, for sure.
That's wild, dude. Like, the religion shit, bro. Like, when you start hearing people say, like, I'm talking to God or something, that doesn't mean they'll necessarily be violent, but clearly, like, something ain't right, man. Like, you pull out a pen and they're like, that's the scribe of God or something. Like, you need to start being like, we're not on the same plane right now. You know what I mean? Like, so...
I noticed that crazy people tend to just be really deep into religion. And I was asking myself this morning, like, why that is. And I think it's because religion allows them to just validate their own crazy ideas.
Yes.
Usually one of the benefits of living in a community with other people, like humans do, is that you get to discuss ideas. Good ideas rise to the top. You can be talking to your neighbors, and your neighbor says, well, I think that all school lunches should be free. And you're like, oh, yeah, I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
You start telling other people about it. If it gets enough support, maybe that'll happen. Then you talk to your other neighbor, and she says that I can see people's souls. I need to bring my husband dark souls to my king, my husband.
Dude, I'm calling the cops. Well, and then, see, that's where we come in, right? And then it's like, I mean, I'll tell you right now, when I pull up, when I'm on my way, because part of your training, right, when you're on your way to your call, you kind of think in your head, okay, what do we need to do here, right? Like, what are the things when I show up that needs to happen? First thing I'm thinking of is, are they on medication, right? And if not, that needs to be discussed. Is there anyone else in the house? Because if this becomes a violent issue, we need to worry about that person. And, but like I said, most of the time, these people are frequent flyers. So you're going to deal with them all the time. And that just happens. And you know what's crazy, too, is, like, speaking of hygiene usually goes in with, like, that stuff.
You
Like,
don't think their house was neat and tidy?
No, probably not. Probably not, dude. There's probably, like, angel feathers hanging on the wall or something. Or I just can't get around the dark souls thing, or, like, these people's souls are dark. Like, dude, what? Like, and not to mention, like, then you get in a shootout. Clearly you're not, because wasn't it that they had thought that the police were these pedophiles? Wasn't it something along those lines? Like they thought that these people came over.
Yeah,
Like,
because they were setting an ambush for the neighbor who they thought was a pedophile. And I'm guessing that maybe they invited him over for dinner or something. I don't know how they tried to lure the guy over.
Yeah.
But the neighbor probably knew these people were crazy. You know, when they started saying things like that, they invite you over. You say, well, maybe I think I'm not going to go over. I think I won't.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then the cops come.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't know. In the article that I read, it seemed like that was the case. But then in the chief's description, it seemed like, the cop was just trying to figure out what's going on there. And, they must have known it was a cop, but I guess who knows. But it was the cops that fell victim to that ambush instead. Yeah. And, dude, they had so many guns.
Yeah.
Like 20 guns. And we talked about guns for self-defense and that I am personally interested in getting one. But, I just need, a handgun. Some of the comments on that video were just, describing, all sorts of heavy weaponry that you need for home defense. Yeah. Some people have arsenals to deal with a simple home invasion. Dude, that is crazy. These people are driving around daydreaming, hoping that someone breaks in their house so they have an excuse to shoot somebody. To have 20 guns laying around, if anybody I knew had that many guns, I'd be like, dude, are you okay? What's going through your head?
When you're talking about clearly severe mental health issues, I don't know. And again, I don't know this full story. I don't know these people personally, right? I didn't work in the city, so I don't know who, how many contacts they've had with law enforcement or something. But you would think at some point, if this person is that nuts, there is stuff you can do to, raise alarms to get those guns away from people.
I was going to ask that. So you know what I mean? So you can, as a neighbor, you could do something?
Well, I don't know about a neighbor, but I'm talking, police-wise. You get if they are not mentally stable and they're talking probably suicidal, I'm gonna go with God now or something, or other issues, you can work on paperwork to either get them just removed from the situation, which is usually easier, or work on starting to get the guns in a different place. Usually they have some relative or something that will take them off their hands for them or something. I see. But it's just ridiculous, dude. It just sounds like they shouldn't have had 20 guns.
Yeah, and maybe, they could be unregistered or the cops didn't know about them. Correct. Or whatever. I mean, they could have been stashed anywhere. Yeah.
In fact, that just happened in the news, dude. Did you hear about Fleet Farm?
No.
So Fleet Farm frickin' is in trouble with the Keith Ellison, the Attorney General, because they were selling guns and weren't selling them properly, they weren't doing all their checks, or they weren't documenting the guns that they were selling. So police were starting to have all these crime scenes with these guns tracing back to Fleet Farm.
Really?
And that's what started it. Well, they found out they have one major suspect in mind who has been selling or buying them from Fleet Farm, and they haven't been doing their checks on this guy, and then he goes and sells it secondhand to people on the streets.
How can a big store like that,
no kidding, dude,
not be doing it correctly? That must have been at a minimum, the owner of the store must have been doing that on purpose, trying to fly under the radar.
Dude, that's prison time, dude. That's not a joke. So that's, hey. But for those people listening, that is usually how that happens, okay? Most of the time, the Trump shooter, that was his parents' gun. That was not his gun, right? Same thing with a lot of these murders that are going on. These guns are typically not owned by the shooter.
Yeah, it's school shooting, pretty much.
Correct. So when they're like, well, we need tighter gun laws, okay? Are there things that could be tied up and zip tied better? Probably. But a lot of times, these guns were either stolen, they're made from a 3D printer, being what's called ghost guns, or they're bought illegally by a person who sold it that's not doing the proper channels. It's not that hard to figure out. You know what I mean? Look at Chicago.
Yeah.
One of the highest restrictive gun laws in the U.S. how's that going?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
New York too.
New York, California, all those things have something in common. People, go ahead, look it up. I'm not going to get into it. But New York, Chicago, Illinois in general, California, what other ones? Maryland is Baltimore. I mean, dude.
Yeah.
So.
One of the things that surprised me whenever we've gone on ride-alongs is like how much of your job is just dealing with people that just have mental illness, whether it's a huge issue or not. Sometimes just minor issues, but a lot of the people you're talking to are just like mentally ill people.
Yep. And to be honest with you, like I cherish that a lot at my work. I actually enjoy working with people that have mental health issues because I think a lot of it, I see it as like I view it as like a physical injury, right? People don't see it that way, but it's almost like the equivalent of like I have a broken arm, I need to fix it. I just need medication to fix it, right? Now, sometimes that broken arm is my whole body's broken compared to something that's more minor. But I actually really enjoy working with people that have mental health issues. What I'm saying is when people are talking about otherworldly things, they probably are not on medication. They need to get on medication, and they can be unpredictable. And that comes with people with mental health issues. That's not a rip on them. That is just what happens, right? You become unpredictable, and people don't know how to handle you because when people are at a normal state, you don't know how to deal with somebody that's not in a normal state, right? So that's just what happens. So, yeah.
Why didn't they just send a mental health counselor to de-escalate the situation with these people?
Yeah, I mean, but they're not armed, so that's, that's fantastic. But it brings up a good point, right? Like, what happened? What would have happened if for some reason their psychologist or something happened to stop by and check on them, or some social worker got a call by a neighbor and they go over there and they just get their head blown off? Like,
yeah,
you're not armed.
That's what would have happened.
Correct. That's exactly what would have happened. Looks like Ken, our neighbor, so we're going to shoot him type of thing. You know what I mean? So, and I don't even know if the neighbor is a pedophile. I mean, I doubt it. Because if she's talking about grabbing people's souls and stuff, I mean, that's probably not necessarily the most...
Yeah, it's probably not a reliable source.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. She probably works for the Onion or whatever it's called. So, but yeah, man, at the end of the day, it's tragic. Cop got killed, and it's too bad. But, you just never take anything for granted, and don't overlook what's supposed to be maybe an easier call or an easier... situation. Just do your best, and it just sucks. Wrong place, wrong time, man.
Yeah, but that's like the number one thing that would stop me from being a cop, because like sometimes I think like you have a pretty stable life, and you are on a good path, at least financially, and like you're probably not too stressed out about income or like the security of your job, a lot of things that people wish for. I'm like, man, like maybe I should have gone down that same path, but I just would be so nervous, dude. Every time that I stopped a car and was like walking up there, like something like this could happen. Like I don't think I'd be able to get over that unpredictability of what I'm walking into.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it doesn't matter how cautious this cop was being. By the description of the chief, it seemed like he was escalating properly. He took out the taser. He grabbed her wrist first and took out her taser and like was going through all those steps, and he probably handled it as good as you can possibly handle it. But he was not prepared to just be hailed with gunfire from this simple call, Right. And there's nothing that he could have done. And I guess that's the risk that you take, but that's, as a regular person, that's what would stop me from taking on that job. I don't think I could ever get over that. Yeah. I could not trust whoever I'm dealing with, especially if it's somebody that I can't predict what they're going to do. Like I can predict what a mentally sane person is going to do.
Yeah.
If it's someone that's like on drugs or has serious mental health issues, like I would be extremely nervous in those situations.
And I think for a lot of people, especially in the business world, where you're dealing with kind of the same stuff, or there's a process to everything. It's kind of like a cookie cutter type process typically. I think that would be the hardest thing for the adaptation is you truly your whole job is to gain control of the situation, right? But the problem is that there are times where you need that person to also be compliant with you to gain that control. Because some things you just can't control by words or whatever you're going to do, right? So, like you said, I mean, that car could be a fresh stolen. You have no idea.
Yeah.
No clue. You could, right? And that's the thing is, like, a lot of people are like, well, it's just a traffic stop. Like, what's a traffic stop? If I were to ask you, Zach, you stop this guy for speeding, turn on your lights, pull him over, how would you go up there and talk to him? What would you tell him?
What would I tell him?
Yeah, like, what would you say to him?
I guess I would, if it was me, I would emulate what cops do to me.
Sure.
And that's,
What would
do you
you
know
do?
why I pulled you over
Okay.
today? Yeah.
All right. So that is now illegal. Okay, we can't say that anymore
Oh, really?
in the state. Yeah.
That's probably good. I hate that question.
Yep, they said it's
So
too
dumb.
incriminating.
It is, yeah.
So we can't do that anymore. But yeah, no, so good answer, right? But a lot of people that I would ask that to would be like, all right, so imagine I'm the civilian and you're the cop and you have to give me a speeding ticket. Okay? So I'll like tear out a notebook piece of paper and just act like it's a speeding ticket and
Yeah.
say, okay, now you have to go tell me that I did something wrong and that you're going to give me a fine. You know,
Yeah.
and I'll give it to them and be like, hey, go ahead. And it's like super uncomfortable for them, right? Because it's tough because
Yeah.
you have to be the bad parent of society.
Yeah.
You have to be the one that spanks people once in a while and says, hey, you screwed up. It's not the end of the world, but there's going to be a consequence to it, and you call it a day,
Yeah.
right? Rarely do people, enjoy a citation. Never seen it, right? So I've seen people react differently to citations,
Yeah.
but good and bad, but you know what I mean? So there's all that.
Cool, dude. Well, yeah, that's it for this week. I guess subscribe if you like it and leave your thoughts down in the comments. And we'll be posting shorts every single day and new episodes every week. See you later.